Shalom WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah Talk. And this week for Shabbat, we will be celebrating the holiday of Sukkot. And Sukkot pushes off the regular Torah reading, which in this case would be Vizot HaBracha, the very last reading in the Torah. We don't actually read it on a Shabbat. We have Sukkot, the first day of Yom Tov Sukkot, on this Shabbat. And then in a week we have Shmini Atzeret on next Shabbat, and we'll read Vizot HaBracha on Simchat Torah a week from Sunday. And then we'll pick up with Bereshit on the next regular Shabbat in a few weeks. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to speak just a moment about Sukkot. Sukkot is known as our happiest holiday. We spoke a lot about happiness around here over the high holidays. Sukkot is actually Zman Simchatenu, the time of our joy. And I wanted to take a parallel between what's happening on the high holidays and what's happening for Sukkot to sort of maybe understand why Sukkot is Zman Simchatenu and why it's okay to talk about Simcha, happiness on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, as well as on Sukkot. So Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which just passed, and I wish everyone a Shana Tova and hope everyone had a very meaningful and easy fast. They are all wrapped up in the spiritual, right? Especially Yom Kippur, we don't eat because we're not supposed to be doing our animalistic things. We're not supposed to eat or drink or have sexual relations or any of the things that we would relate with our animal selves. We dress in white like angels, or maybe like physical entities. Some people say the white is like our shrouds to remind us of our mortality, but it might be reminding us of our supernaturality. Also, we say certain lines as if we were angels, like when we say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed, after we say the Shema and before we say the V'ahavta, we say them out loud, the only time of year we do that, because that is a line that the angels said at the Red Sea, back in the time of the parting of the Red Sea, but we put those words like in our mouths as angels. So everything about Yom Kippur is about being beyond corporeality, beyond physicality, into the supernatural or the spiritual self. When we come to Sukkot, everything becomes extremely physical. We build this hut, the actual sukkah, and the rabbis were really taken with just how important the actual physical structure of a sukkah was, even though Rabbi Akiva often describes the sukkah as representing the Ananei HaKavod, the clouds of glory that sheltered the Israelites in the desert as they journeyed. Even so, the actual physical structure, there's an entire, basically, section of the Mishnah just about that. How big should it be? How high does a wall have to be be a wall? How high does the ceiling have to be to still be a structure? How it can't go higher than a certain amount. What makes a valid ceiling? What makes valid walls? And how many walls do you need for it to be used? 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. Can it be broken in 2 places? All these physical questions the rabbis are totally caught up with. And then we also wave the lulav and etrog, a sign probably, let's say they're related to the harvest. So that has to do all about food. And by the way, the mitzvah in the sukkah is to eat. So it's all about being physical. On Yom Kippur, we don't eat. And on Sukkot, we are commanded to eat in the sukkah. Actually, a mitzvah to eat, so especially in the sukkah. But the eating is the important part to show that you're dwelling in the sukkah. And then we have the lulav and etrog, these harvest symbols. They also say they symbolize a person. The etrog is the heart, the different shaped leaves, the eyes and the lips, they kind of look like those, and the lulav, the spine. So there's the physicality of the body, all these physical symbols. 5 days after Yom Kippur, we are have gone from the incredibly spiritual to the incredibly physical. There seems to be a message to tell us that both are important. That's important to set one day aside to totally elevate our spiritual selves, but it's just as important right afterwards to bring that spiritual practice into our physical lives. And that's really what Sukkot is all about. It's about building this hut, dwelling in it, eating there, waving our lulav and etrog, celebrating the senses and celebrating the physicality, the corporeality of the human being. All of that to say, we're not supposed to be beyond our physical selves. We can celebrate our physical selves as well. We often say God made us both little less than angels and also not much more than animals. And the question is often, how can we bring out our angelic self to the elimination of that which is animalistic? But the message of Yom Kippur and Shabbat together is that that's not the idea. The idea is actually to merge the two, to remain the people who we are and recognize and even celebrate our humanity. We're not supposed to be anything other than human, but also to elevate up those things. And a lot of Judaism is about just that. Laws around sexual relations, right? That we're supposed to do it. Sex is only supposed to be had in marriage, in monogamous relationships. Laws around how we eat, what we eat, saying a bracha, delaying when we eat. We don't have to dig right in like animals. Laws around when we are allowed to eat and drink and when we cannot, and so on and so forth. That whole concept of bringing spirituality and that angelic self that we celebrated on Yom Kippur into the physicality and corporeality of our everyday lives is so much what Judaism has to offer us through its mitzvot. And that in itself is a sense of great joy and happiness, that we don't have to be anything other than what we are in order to be what God wants us to be. Right? God created us physically, and God wants us to be physical. God also wants our spiritual journey to be uplifting and enlightening. And what a great and beautiful thing to celebrate, that we, within our animal selves, have the ability to have this spiritual journeying, and that we have this spiritual self, incorporated into this beautiful body that God has given us. That is something to celebrate. And so I wish you on this physical holiday of Sukkot a Chag Sameach, a happy holiday, and enjoy our Zman Simchatenu, the time of our happiness.